let's discuss about circular flow. A circular flow of income is an economic model that describes how the money is exchanged in production, distribution and consumption of goods and services, and these flows, which happens in a circular manner from producers to consumer and back to the producer, is termed as a circular flow. A circular flow of income is an integral concept in economics as it describes the foundation of the transactions that builds an economy. However, the basic model of circular flow of income considers only two-sector model, the firm and the household, which is why it is called as two-sector model in an economy. Let us try to understand the meaning of these terms as a whole concept in a very simple steps and language. Firms are the producer of goods and services, and therefore they require various production or societal resources produce goods and services. The factor of production comprising up of your land, labor, buildings, stock, stationery, etc. would be considered. When we are talking about household, household provides the resources or factor of production. For example, a household provides land and labor to carry out business operations in exchange for the money paid as rent, wages, etc. So, the money flow from the firm to household in the form of rent, wages, etc. can take place. A household basically utilizes wages and rent to purchase certain goods and services in order to fulfill the needs and wants. When the household pay to these goods and services, the money flows back to the firm, completing a circular movement of money. The circular flow of money is very important because it helps to measure the national income. The sector in the circular flow model are the component of the circular or for the calculation of national income. The expenditure approach calculates nation's GDP as the sum of household consumption expenditure. They consider private domestic investment, government consumption and investment expenditure as well as net export. The second could be knowledge of interdependence. The circular flow model underpins the knowledge of interdependence between sector in an economic system. The activities and the money flow cannot take place without interaction with one another. Hence, when we summarize about a circular flow model, the circular flow model is an economic model that presents how money, goods, services move between the sectors in an economic system. The flow of money between the sectors are also tracked to measure a company's or a country's national income. Not companies here, it is the country's national income or GDP. So, the model is known as a circular flow of income. In the basic two-flow or two-sector model flow, the circular flow model, the money flows from household to businesses as a consumer expenditure in exchange of goods and services produced by the businesses, then flows back from houses or from businesses to household for labor that individual provides. In five-sector model, can you guess what would be the sector which would be including? Well, in the five-sector model, it would consist of household as a form of public sector, business, government, foreign sector, financial sector and so on. What could be the implication of circular flow of model? Well, as a fundamental concept of macroeconomics, the circular flow model has been widely applied in different studies with significant impact on understanding of economics. Some of the examples and significance we are going to discuss right away. Number one would be unending nature of economic activities. Money and economic resources flow in cycles indefinitely with an equilibrium of aggregate income and expenditure. Second could be with regard to injection and leakages. The circular flow of an economy is balanced when the total injection is equal to the leakages. If injection overweight leakages, the country's national income will grow. If injection are below leakages, the national income will decrease. Coming to the discussion of inflation as our next topic. Inflation, we all must be aware of this term. Can you tell me what is the meaning of inflation and what do you understand in a very simple language? Well, you have guessed it correct. Inflation is the rise in prices which can be translated as the decline of purchasing power over a period of time. The rate at which purchasing power drops can be reflected in the average price increases of a basket of selected goods and services over a period of time. Inflation thus is an increase in the price of goods and services over a given period of specific time, and inflation causes your buying power to erode, meaning that the same dollars today buys a lesser in the future. The simple story is too much money chasing too few goods or fewer goods and services. There are major causes of inflation. One of them could be a demand pull inflation. Demand pull inflation happens when the demand for certain goods and services is greater than economy's ability to meet those demands. When this demand outpaces supply, there's an upward pressure on prices, causing inflation. The second one could be a cost push inflation. Cost push inflation is the increase of prices when the cost of wages and materials goes up. These costs are often passed down to consumers in the form of higher prices for those goods and services what they purchase. An example would be, let's say, lumber, as lumber is an input goods for houses. When the cost of lumber spiked as much as 400% earlier in 2021, it had an impact on increase in housing prices, resulting in inflation. The third reason could be, or the causes could be, increased money supply. Increased money supply is defined as a total amount of money in circulation, which includes cash, coins, and balances and bank accounts according to the Federal Reserve. If the money supply increases faster than the rate of production, this could result in inflation, particularly demand pull inflation, because there will be too many dollars chasing too few products. An increase in the money supply is usually created by the Federal Reserve through a process which is called as, yes, you are right, it's called as open market operations. The another causes could be devaluation. Devaluation is downward adjustment in country's exchange rate, resulting in lower value for country's currency. The devaluation of currency makes a country's export less expensive, encouraging foreign nations to buy more of the devalued goods. Devaluation also makes foreign products for the devaluing country more expensive, which encourages citizens of the devaluing country to buy domestic product over foreign imports. China is perhaps most common or most known for his tactics as the United States and other nations have frequently accused China of working to devalue the yuan over the years. Another reason could be rising wages. Rising wages is exactly what it sounds like, an increase in what's being paid to the worker. Wages are a cost of production. If wages rise in a large amount, the businesses will either have to pass the cost on or live with lower margin. The exception is if they can offset wage growth with higher productivity. However, economists remain mixed on the impact of gradual increase in the wages, like raising the minimum wage compared to faster, more sudden wage growth seen in the places like Silicon Valley, etc. Some believes that an increase in the wage could result in cost push inflation due to higher cost of businesses, while other believes that higher wage across board, not just concentrated in certain sector, will also increase the demand enough to offset a spike in the prices. Sometimes policy and regulation are also few causes which happens to go for inflation. Certain policy can also result in either a cost push or demand pull inflation. When the government issues tax subsidies for certain products, it can increase demand. If the demand is higher than supply, the cost could rise. Additionally, stringent building regulation and even rent stabilization policy could inadvertently increase the cost and create an inflationary environment, thus passing those costs to the resident or artificially reduce the supply of the houses. So you can say in a summary that inflation generally around 2% per year is a normal part of economic system. Under normal financial circumstances, this means that your money is worth less each year unless it is gaining an interest rate greater than or equal to inflation. Thus, in order to ensure that your money is keeping pace with inflation, consider annual salary increase or cost of living adjustment by your employer. There are basically three subcategories of inflation that is there in your curriculum. Let's discuss one by one. The first one being is moderate inflation. This type of inflation takes place when there is rise in the prices of goods and services at a single rate annually. Moderate inflation is also called as creeping inflation. At times, the moderate inflation in an economy, the prices of goods and services increases, but at a moderate rate. And that's why the name has been coined as moderate inflation. However, the rate of increase in the prices differs in different countries. It is easy to anticipate moderate inflation and therefore individuals hold money as a store of value. The second one is galloping inflation. This type of inflation takes place at the time of rise in the prices of goods and services at 2-digit or even 3-digit rate per annum. Another name for galloping inflation is called as jumping inflation. The worst sufferer of galloping inflation are middle and lower class individuals. Due to this, people are unable to save money for the future, and this kind of situation requires strict measures to control inflation. Sometimes they are also referred to as jumping inflation, as we said, as it usually doubles or triples digit rate is being seen moving ahead. Galloping inflation negatively affects the economy and it pushes the economy towards a collapse. It is because during galloping inflation, banks refuses to lend loans. Businesses struggles to accurately calculate future expenditure savings money becomes impossible. People are unable to save enough of money, and people often start buying goods and assets like gold in order to retain the value of their money. Although no official upper limit has been set for galloping inflation, economists generally considers that annual inflation rate should be between 10 to somewhere around 100% as a galloping inflation. Some of the causes of galloping inflation is, number one could be money supply. When the supply of goods and services remains constant and there is a sudden urge, or it is seen, the sudden surge is seen in the money supply, particularly in the unsecured money supply, it is causing a galloping inflation. The second one could be exchange rate disparity. So when an economy opts for a foreign currency while retaining its national currency, it slips into galloping inflation. Another causes of galloping inflation could be commodity price increase. Once the country begins to export its main commodity at a lower price than the domestic price, then galloping inflation is experienced within the country. Some of the example of galloping inflation could be the Roaring Twenties. As the United States of America won the First World War, the Central Power, Germany, Austria, Hungary and Turkey were forced to pay for the damages during the war, while also supplying raw materials to their allies. Sure enough, the United States profited tremendously from these imports. This allowed the US to build a better infrastructure, increase production rate and invent new equipments. During this time, people were getting paid handsomely, and the companies that were selling products rapidly began to enlist themselves in the stock markets. Sure enough, people were buying stocks as well. The United States during the Roaring Twenties was seeing as inflation rate of 15%, and interestingly, this was significantly profitable to the economy. However, it was followed by Great Depression, which we all witnessed after that. Second example could be energy crisis. During 20th century, the entire infrastructure of US was based on oil, and its major supplier was Iran. However, Iran was amidst a revolution that later came to be known as Iranian Revolution, which placed a massive halt on the US economy. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, decided to restrict the supply of oil to the US, and this was in 1970s energy crisis. During this time, the prices of the commodity skyrocketed and the inflation rate was recorded at 13.9%. It was nothing short of disaster for minimum wage workers. The next one is hyperinflation. This type of inflation takes place when increase in the prices is extremely high and out of control. In other words, hyperinflation occurs when increase in the prices is more than 3 digits annually. The cause behind hyperinflation is the unrestricted increase in the supply of money in the market, and this results in a situation of imbalance in the supply and demand of money. Consequently, money loses the real worth at a rapid speed. Example could be Germany in the year 1922-1923, which saw an hyperinflation. Apart from this, 1989 and 1991, Argentina, Brazil, Zimbabwe were also striving hard to overcome hyperinflation. Thank you.